Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission as we strive to be better together.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Gold Mine. I gotta say, I'm really digging the intro. I'm liking it. Outside of that, really excited. We don't have much of a plan for a show. It's just going to be Shaun and myself, and I am excited to get started. Now, while I am excited, y'all should be too. Do the things like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails when we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine and Fridays for The Collective. Also, don't forget to sign up for the Reinforcement Loop, the newsletter that goes out every week, usually on Mondays, but sometimes a little early, like this last Sunday. And stoked for that. Make sure you stay in the loop. Other than that, we're going to be talking about dedication. And the reason I picked dedication was the post that you put out, that you and Seb put out actually just recently, of you two sitting by the computer. And I was like, that's some solid dedication. Coming back to the book constantly, coming back to the work constantly, trying to reinvigorate some things where time can allow it to. Off. So how's the foothills treating you now?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's been an interesting last couple of days on particularly the topic that you've chosen, dedication, because really this is exemplary or a fine example of dedication, not just to a process, not just to something that got started and is yet to finish, but a dedication to friendship, a dedication to a mission, a dedication to a general trajectory that creates outcomes. So yeah, dedication is probably a great topic to jump into, given that, again, we're exemplifying it as I sit in Seb's seat in his office using his microphone and computer. It's a fine example of combined dedication, which ironically then ripples out to the further extension of dedication, and that is you and I talking about dedication on what is essentially now about a 2-year journey, if my calendar is correct.
3, actually, if your calendar is correct.
I suppose. Yeah. I was thinking social media wise,
Social media wise, sure, 2 years, but the process started about this time frame, about 3 years ago, and I actually just saw some photos of I think it was Army Sergeant Major put it out, of the photo of Pegasus jump, which I'm wearing my shirt right now. That one of actually hanging out with you for the first time and just chilling and discussing things, and then immediately after that is when we got started on the collective, was after that Remembrance Day. So almost 3 years exactly, and it's been an interesting ride. I wanted to talk about dedication specifically in regards to how to keep it up, right? Like how to keep focused on the thing that you're trying to do consistently, even when there's a break, even when there's a little bit of time off. And it was the clip I just put out of Isaac Miller from the Brotherhood podcast we did last week, where he was like, sometimes we come in, sometimes we go out, sometimes, life gets in the way and you have to step away from something that you've been dedicated to for a while, and then you got to come back to it. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that particular process of sometimes where you have to take time off, family stuff, friggin' life, friggin' job, whatever. How to come back to it? What do you think?
Well, there's a couple of different ways I could do this right now. But first of all, I'll say this, that clip by Isaac was amazing. And the clip before it with Clay from the same show on The Brotherhood, that clip was amazing. And so, ironically, those clips wouldn't exist without our dedication to continuously pushing the pace on the show, continuously trying to elevate the game for ourselves within the show and for others who are part of the show, that push to not just a vague term of dedication, but dedication to dedication is a layer that I don't think is often considered. And then another way I could take this conversation is this morning. One of the reasons that I'm out here to visit Seb and Alex and his family, his property out here in Cardston. I'm actually looking at the Chief, the mountain right now.
It's a glorious view out there.
It is, and by the way, it makes for some pretty spectacular photos. And so one of the interesting things about being at Seb's place right now is this morning we taped about 90 minutes on the topic of self-identity leading to self-worth. And so, you know, here we are about talking dedication in this show. And it's a reflection of how dedicated Seb and I have been to this process of writing a book. We've convened together a number of times, both digitally and physically, to push the pace on the book, to create something that not only we will be satisfied with as our best effort, but that we will be satisfied with on behalf of anyone who picks it up. I am dedicated to excellence, the pursuit of excellence. And so that dedication to a higher standard is generally what has run my life. And so I think that dedicating yourself to something can just become an idea rather than an actual applied practice. And so perhaps what I would like to discuss is the illusion of dedication versus the ability to look backwards and see how dedicated you have been.
So when you say illusion of dedication, elucidate us. What, like, expand on that. What do you mean by the illusion itself?
Well, okay. So first of all, I've got to say that now I've got to be a bit careful because we literally just came out like 10 minutes ago from a chapter 1 piece that actually talks a little bit about dedication. And so, I can't deliver all of the lightning and thunder, but what I will say is this, that let's take one example. A person can believe that they're dedicated to their personal improvement, to their forward momentum in life. They can believe that they're being dedicated, but really all they're doing is ruminating. Now, the two words sound similar: dedicated, ruminated.
Yep.
Rumination takes you nowhere. In fact, it locks you into position. Whereas with removing rumination from the conversation, now we just have forward momentum. So how long do you spend in that liminal space of understanding where you are, where you want to go? How much time do you allow based on your timeline that you want to achieve that thing and the velocity that's required to do that? Dedicated to a thing is dedicated to one thing. Dedicated to life is an entire different conversation. So if you're dedicated to life, you have to learn a process that works against all outcomes. And so is a person interested in just getting the gold medal, or is a person interested in learning how to get all the gold medals? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm tracking this, and I'm wondering how much application there is in the art, I guess the art of dedicating something. So if I want to like dedicate myself to the team, or the military, or dedicate myself to service, or the whatever it is that I want to dedicate myself to. I could very easily just tell myself that by doing the minimum or the standard, just maintaining that for 40 years or 50 years, that could be my dedication. But am I really dedicating myself to it? Am I consistently making it better? Or am I just plodding along? And I was just thinking about how many people would spend a career 40, 50 years doing one thing, just doing it, not excelling at it, not trying to get it better, not trying to make it an advancement in any way. And it's interesting because I can see a lot of people I know from back in the day who think that they were dedicated, but really all they were doing was waking up and doing the same thing every day.
To some degree, attending
Yeah.
rather than dedicating. And listen, everyone's been there. I've been there. In some instances, I haven't been dedicated to the thing that was in front of me to a degree that I'm pleased with. And I think that's kind of the crux of the conversation, is contextualizing what your sense of dedication is, what the word dedication means to you. Because if it is to show up and attend, and you think that that is dedication, you've missed an entire piece of dedication, which is the pursuit of more within dedication. So in other words, you get to contextualize your understanding of what dedication means. And I believe I've said this recently in the podcast, that there's a wild difference between wanting to do something and then another aspect of life is getting it done at the highest levels. In other words, if you want to start ping pong, do you want to just play or do you want to be the best in the world? Now, I want to be the best in the world at anything that I do, because if I'm doing it, if it's worth my life energy, it's worth seeing what I'm capable of. Now, pursuing world championship in everything. When I'm making my coffee this morning, I'm trying to make the best coffee in the world based on my skill sets, my vast experience with coffee, I suppose, and knowing how well I've made it in the past and how well I want to make it in the future. I don't know if I'm capable of making better coffee tomorrow or 10 years from now, but what I do know is I am capable of applying a process that has been long refined to allow me to observe, was this better 10 years from now versus today? And so I have a sense through a long time of observing my performance of, I'm here, I want to be there, I understand the process to get there. Now I just have to dedicate the time to be where I want to be, to see the thing that I want to see, to feel what I want to feel. And usually for me, that is, I want to feel what the best in the world feel. I want to have a richer tapestry of what coffee is, of what apples taste like, of what a mountain looks like, of what the wind feels on my face. If you've never felt a brisk, cold, cutting wind on the left side of your face, then how much do you understand about wind? If your sense of wind is just a light tropical breeze, is that all that wind is? I don't think so. And so it requires us to explore the fullness that's in front of us, that's available to us all the time. We have to explore the left and the right of the extremes of the moment in front of us to really understand the moment.
I agree with you, but there is a level of the one thing I guess we're not really engaging is that there's a cost. There is a definitive cost to a dedication of any one thing, right?
You almost made me spit out my water.
I'm good like that. But the point is that I think a lot of times we say, "Oh, I'm going to be dedicated to this. I'm going to do this every day. I want to get better at whatever. I'm going to, excel in whatever I'm doing," without an understanding of the amount of time that it's going to take away. right? Like I can say I want to dedicate my time to doing the podcast. I want to dedicate my time to the clips, and I'm going to make sure that I dedicate to excellence in what I'm doing. But what we forget is that now I have to remove time from my family. I got to remove time from my renovations. I got to remove time from other places in order to dedicate it to that. And I was likening it to kind of like shifting around. Do you remember those little puzzles where you have like one block missing and you have to like shift the pieces around to make the puzzle? And that's the way I kind of see it in terms of dedication, is that I have to figure out the picture by taking pieces and moving them around and eventually getting to a point where I have a full picture of what it is I'm trying to do. But I won't know what that is until I take the time to mess with the picture, if that makes sense.
Well, so let me give a practical example that dovetails exactly into what you just said, using you as the example, use the podcast as the example. I believe that it's our responsibility as individuals to understand what we're capable of. And the only way to understand that is to push ourselves in both directions. You've got to understand what doing nothing feels like, and you've got to understand what doing everything feels like. And somewhere between those two positions is a sense of balance. Now, the practical explanation, using you as the example, is this. When we started off the podcast, you know what I was like. I was a lunatic with a hellacious pace. And I wanted us to get to a spot in a perhaps impossible pace. But what it allowed us to do, what it allowed you to do, what it allowed me to do, is understand how long a person can hang on to the fiery pace. And then at some point, something has to change. And so then how far do you back it off? Maybe if you back it off too much, eventually the lesson will be learned that actually I've got a little bit of spare time on my hands that I can fill in for the podcast. Now we're at a point, and you did push back on me recently with listen, man, we're all busy. I want to do my BJJ. I want my family, this and the podcast. And the podcast is now, it's moved from here to kind of here now for you personally.
Yep.
Where initially you were all in and we were both maximum effort. Then we dialed it back a bit. Now I feel like we've found a good rhythm, a good roles and responsibilities, a good workload burden, a good balance, not just for the podcast, but for our lives.
Yeah.
But we would never know what our sense of appropriate dedication is for this moment in time unless we explored the other two sides to get context. That is achieving balance within dedication. But no one will ever understand what they're capable of until they freaking push that pace.
That's the truth. And I mean, my hair was on fire for a very long time.
Dude, I've still got a fire extinguisher here.
Right. Yeah. That initial year was something I tell people about it now, and they're like, what? You did a year worth of podcast every day? And I look back on it going like, I did. I don't really know how. Like I obviously know how physically, but there were lots of point in times where I would wake up in the morning and just be like, what am I doing? What am I doing? All right, let's get started anyway, and just hammer it in.
Well, hang on a sec. That's not necessarily true. And the only reason I'm like interjecting right now is not because it's to do with you. It's to make a point for the audience that there were times in the morning or the night before that you were like, dude, I don't have it in me. And I was like, forget that. It's freaking happening. We've got to find a way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was me, like overseas, one knee in front of the hotel lobby, trying to check in another country, in the back of it, whatever. Yeah. But that is a form of dedication when all things point towards, I just can't do this. I don't have the time. I don't have the will. I don't have the energy. I don't have the strength, whatever. there will always be times in life where you're facing it and you think, I don't have it in me. Well, sometimes it requires another person to say, I don't care if that's what you think. This is what's happening. And sometimes we all need a push. Me, sometimes more than anyone. I push myself hard. But you know, my favorite push is being surrounded by people who freaking kick ass. And I'll look at them and I'll think, man, I got to pick up the pace. I'm dedicated, but holy, are they dedicated? I think I can be more dedicated, you know?
Yeah. One of the interesting things, and I got some comments here I want to touch on in a second. Last night I went to jiu-jitsu, and I've been sick all week and trying to get this thing out of my head. And I was having back spasms all day, and I was just like I just
Dude,
don't.
you're a mess.
Yeah, I'm a complete mess. And I just didn't want to go. And I sat there and I thought to myself, like, I have to be there. I have to just be there. Whether or not I actually do anything, and I didn't. I just kind of hung out by the wall and gave instruction, but I just had to be there. And that, in my mind, that's the dedication that I have to jiu-jitsu, is the fact that, and I tell this to my students and the other people I train with, is that just show up. Let whatever happens happen, but just be there. And that happened with the podcast on a number of occasions where I did not think we were going to have a show, or my brain was not there, or I was completely out to lunch, and I still hit live, and we went live, and we did it. And it was some of them were not great, some of them were awesome, some of them turned into really good conversations, and others didn't. But we would, again, like you said, we would never have known any of that had we not pushed to that degree, and then still did it anyway. So I want to hit these comments real quick. Dan Cameron jumped in here early on. He said, best duo I've seen since doing bar walks in downtown PJ. So appreciate that, Dan. Dave Curvin jumped in here. He said, good afternoon, gents. Hope you're both doing great. Keep up the awesome work and content. You guys rock. So appreciate that, Dave. And then Vanessa jumped on the YouTube side here and says, I'm intrigued by Chance's point here. How do you differentiate certain instances where getting caught in the pedantics is unnecessary? That's a good question.
It is a good question. I think that perhaps differentiating requires contextualization. And so you got to do it wrong a bunch of times. You got to do it right a few times in order to understand where you sit in the sense of pedantistry.
That's a good word.
Pedantistry. And so the pedantics of the moment, the making your life difficult by hyper focusing on the minutia. Sometimes there's no room for that. Sometimes there's no time for that. But I do believe from time to time, we have to make time in respect to pedantics. Otherwise, where does the granularity go? If everything is a hammer, you look at life with a sledgehammer. Until you've used a scalpel, the pedantics of the moment, you don't have a broad array of tools. And so to always be door kicking instead of just trying the doorknob, you'll never learn the variety of ways that you can approach life and achieve successful outcomes without pedantistry.
I like that. I was thinking, as I was reading the question, was that you can never really know what's pedantic until you do it a bunch of times.
Correct.
Like, you have to see what is and isn't pedantic just based on the fact of doing it. Because somebody could say, hey man, this is useless. Why are we even doing this? Well, so that we know whether it's useless or not, because it's pretty easy to say something is useless without ever having tried it. And I was just recently talking to my wife about coffee. You got me slowly interested in coffee, and now I've experienced enough cups, I guess, now where I've taken the time to do a pour over and really experience the moment and the smells and all of the experiences within it. But I'm just starting to taste the differences. Nice. I'm starting to gain the refinement that I needed to be able to pick them apart. Without that refinement, it just tasted like coffee. and like, oh wow, it's bitter. Okay, great. Now, what else? Right. And it took hundreds of cups of coffee before I could actually go, I think there's a bit of burnt caramel in the background there. And just to really dive into the thought pattern of it. But the pedantics of how to brew the cup of coffee matter. But when I first started, I didn't think they mattered because I never experienced brewing that cup of coffee. I've never experienced taking that time to develop the skill set. And it's quite interesting. I actually just looked this up. Dedicated is an adjective. Devoted to a cause, ideal, or purpose. See also zealous.
Hmm.
And I really like using the word zealous. It's a great word. But it comes across, it brings across the concept of what is actually needed to be dedicated of something. You should have zeal in your dedication. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right. However, is it something you can teach yourself, or is it something you have to be taught? And by that, I mean, can you be born, live a life, and somehow along the way understand truly what dedication means, absent of any input from any other human being? And I don't think that's the case. I think that we all have to understand deeper granularity on the term dedication and what it means for us, but also slash what it means for all of those around us. So by simply representing a dedicated life, I do believe that others observing that form of dedication can help better understand for themselves what levels of dedication are out there in the world. And it comes down to that old trite statement of there's just levels to the game, bro. In everything, in podcasting, in coffee making, in anything that you choose, irrespective of whether you're really good at it or not, whatever level you're at, there's levels above you and there's levels below you. And that is the way of life. And so, to the term zeal, how much zeal do you have in life? I think that's incumbent upon the person to, first of all, ask themselves, where are they in life? And then the next piece is, which direction do they want to go in life? And then maybe the most important question of all is, why do I want to go in that direction? Why do I feel like I want to dedicate myself to something? Because if your why isn't strong enough, we know that rarely does a person see their final outcome position through dedication, even though they weren't really interested in going that deep in that trajectory. I've never seen it happen. Without a strong why, a person rarely gets anywhere.
That's for sure. And I think also, to your point about whether or not it needs to be, whether it's learned or like kind of born with, I think you need to see other people be dedicated. I think you need to see other people's zeal before you can go like, okay, that guy's, he's not going to the bar, he's going to the gym. That lady is going to the library rather than going out with her friends. Like you have to be able to witness it through your life to really understand it. And it usually starts with, what is wrong with that person? Why aren't they coming out? Like, what is up with, like, why would you go that far?
Why is that guy so weird?
Exactly. Until you start to dive into it and go like, well, you start to understand why that person is doing that. And once you talk to them or engage with them or you watch them long enough, you then start to see that it's either like a love affair with it, and you fall in love with that particular task and you're just going to do that over and over and over again. Sometimes it is it's like a spite thing, whereas I'm going to do this to prove them wrong or whatever it is, right? So there's lots of ways that it can happen. And I wrote down here refinement because I got a mental image of when you're refining, say, dirt to find gold, right? You start with the big rocks and you shake those off, and then it gets into the smaller and more fine meshes to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. But most gold that is brought up from the ground is in minuscule flakes, right? It's not in large chunks of, no one's carrying boulders of gold around. Like, here you go. It requires an immense amount of refinement in order to get down to the level where you can strip the gold out from the silt, which is really, really fine. And to the point of the show's name, the gold mine, that's what we're doing. We're trying to refine every aspect of what we're doing. We're trying to refine the discussion. We're trying to refine how we interact with each other. We're trying to refine all the other pieces to it. And I think it's such a great word in terms of dedication, is that it requires you to refine what your understanding of dedication is.
Let me play with that for a sec. So I do like the idea, panning for gold. Okay. But what happens before you decide you're going to pan for gold? Any idea?
In what regard? Because I know the steps, but
you wake up one morning, this morning, and you decide, man, I think I'm going to go pan for gold. Then what?
Well, you need the equipment. You need to find a spot to actually do it. You need to find river. You need to find
there we go,
works, etc.
That's right. So you might want something, but before you run out your front door to the imaginary gold panning position, you've kind of like got to sit in your chair, drink a bit of coffee, and think like, okay, what am I going to need? Which direction am I going to go? Does it require a river? Does it require a creek? Do I have to be in the mountains? Can you pan for gold in a desert? All of these considerations, i.e., framing up a structure that you can understand and step into as a label called, I'm going to pan for gold. It's not, no one arrives or transporter beams to the perfect river with perfect weather and perfect gold flakes. What we all face is a variety of choices, a variety of decisions just to get out the door. And at some part in that process, people give up. They don't even get out the door to go buy the gold panning equipment. That all comes down to a why. But if your why's strong enough, you'll get out the door. You'll go to the hardware store. You'll get your gear and you'll start driving to a river. And then you'll get to the river. And by the way, as you get to the river, you still haven't panned for gold yet. The skies open up. The temperature drops. Now it's a blizzard. Now what? Do you quit? Do you turn around and say, you know what? It's cold and miserable. I'll pan for gold another day. Dedication to a process will have you facing adversity. You'll face all the weather. You'll face all of the inconveniences. You might be chased up the creek by a bear. Who knows? Life is sometimes unpredictable. But what you can predict is your intention to dedicate your life to the thing that you said you would, in order to see what you're capable of in the thing that you self-selected. If I'm going to say I'm going to pan for gold, I want to be a world champion in gold panning. Will I ever arrive there? Probably not. But that isn't the important part. What is important is that you enter into a process that exposes you to something that is difficult and new, that teaches you more about the world around you and who you are as a person in that world.
So then what about when the dedication does not align with your why anymore? So like you have, I want to go gold. I want to go mine for gold. I'm going to be the best damn gold miner ever. And you get out, say, to the Yukon, and you buy all your gear and you start your work and you spend millions of dollars, and you 10, 15 years down the road, and you're like, man, this is the thing I dedicated my life to. And it's not there anymore. That why that I started with has changed. Maybe you have kids. Maybe your like situation changed. Maybe you run out of money. Maybe you fail completely and you hit freaking, I say rock bottom, but I mean, we all know it can always be worse. But you get to a point where Now everything has to change. It has to change. Then what? Because your dedication to that one goal perhaps isn't achieved, but now everything has to shift. What do you think?
It's a great question. In fact, we talked about it this morning in the first chapter of the book. And so again, I'm not all the thunder and lightning, but I will say this, that there's actually a couple of considerations here. The situation that you proposed is not uncommon. It's happened to me a number of times. It's why I'm in my 10th career right now. And by the way, all of those careers weren't like, you know, garbage careers that led to nowhere, and I was fully disappointed, and I feel like I'm a lesser person for choosing those trajectories. I feel quite the opposite. Everything that I've done in my life and the variety of different trajectories that I've entered into have made me a richer, more perhaps beautiful tapestry to define not only myself, but to help others around me understand that there is always more available to us than we think. So I believe that if you're 15 years into your goal panning expedition journey and you realize that something's got to change, big deal. You know, all those 15 years weren't lost. You're 15 years better for the dedication to a pursuit of excellence. What you learned in that journey is equally applicable. All those lessons are easily transferable to the left and right of you. You want to be this? Do that. You want to do this? Do that. It's easy when you understand that if you can create a good process over those 15 years, that process is transferable to anything. It's transferable to your family relationship. It's transferable to your next trajectory. It's transferable to making a coffee. The process is transferable. So that is not lost time. That is just you arriving at a moment in time, thinking to yourself, time for a change. The second thing that a person has to consider is when they're at that inflection point, along the way, did I ever parallel process? Or was I so blinder, so dogmatic? Was I so hyper-focused on what I wanted that I never enriched my life with other curiosities, other fascinations, other things that are making me more three-dimensional? If 15 years in, you realize this ain't for me, you should be able to step change into the thing that you also love. You love riding horses. You love making coffee. You love whatever. You can't just have one love in life. You've got to have a few that you can not only migrate through seamlessly, but you can actually, in parallel processes, stack, align, and understand that the process is not only universal, but the processes build on the process, so that you, at 15 years in, should be a robust three-dimensional human that isn't shaken by the realization that something's got to change, you know?
Yeah. We're gonna do a show on abject failure pretty soon, and I'm getting it set up. So, and it was a request from the community, and I'm excited to get it in there because I don't want to get too deep into it though today, because we can talk about it all day long. But I love where you're going with this, because it shouldn't matter. It does in the moment when the first time it happens to you, and you're like, oh man, like, oh geez, now I gotta figure out a whole new life. But later on, as you start to realize you start taking pieces from this, and you go, oh, it's kind of like this, but why are they the same? Oh, wait a second, there's a larger process piece to this that all of these things apply to, instead of just this particular path and this particular path show me things. It is a larger tapestry. I love the word tapestry to it, because it brings to brings to my mind all the different threads, all of the different pieces, all of the different knots, everything that comes together to create a larger image in and of itself mean almost nothing, right? You take a single strand of thread, whoop-de-doo-dah, it's a single strand of thread. But even that is multiple pieces woven together. And so it depends on how deep you want to go, what level of the game you want to play at. And I think this is a fascinating subject. We're going to get into it very soon.
Listen, the reason I chose a beautiful tapestry, like when's the last time you heard me throw out beautiful tapestry?
It's been a while.
It's been unusual, right? So the reason I chose beautiful tapestry to represent myself, though maybe I don't feel that way, is because we were talking about panning for gold, looking for gold flakes. What I envisioned in my mind was a medieval tapestry. And medieval tapestries, they generally had gold threads weaved through them, and they gave a certain luxurious sheen. In the right light, it was a different look in the morning, and in the evening it was a different look. And so I love the idea of being able to weave a three-dimensional life that one day appears like this to some person, and then the next day it appears a little differently. Though the tapestry hasn't changed, their angle of observation or the perspective of the light or their sense of how they're looking at it, it changes. The tapestry didn't change. Our perception of the tapestry changes. And so I don't think anyone can ever understand this subject until they've looked for beautiful tapestries out there in the world and can see that they exist in human form, and then understand that person who represents that tapestry didn't fall out of the apple tree. It wasn't luck. It was a dedication to a life of excellence that inevitably leads to the outcome of this beautiful tapestry.
And one of the things you say, it wasn't luck, but I've found from talking to all the people we've talked to and all the experiences I've had in my life is that luck shows up for the dedicated people.
Yes.
Right. And so there is a aspect of luck involved, because who knows? Sometimes you talk to the right person at the right time with the wrong information, and that opportunity is gone. And sometimes you talk to the wrong person at the right time with the information. Like, a lot goes into that tapestry, but it's a dedication to the skill set. Have you ever seen the movie The Red Violin?
Oh yeah, it's a great movie.
Great movie. And I love throughout the movie, they show the building of that violin and the
beautiful.
Great, yes.
But very artistic movie.
Yes, but what I want to touch on was the fact of the dedication to the art of the build in and of itself is what always struck me within that movie. Was each piece of the violin itself was a masterwork. And once it all came together, it became a masterwork. But I guess the key in this is, of the luck portion of it, is that's 40, 50 years of making violins, right? To eventually get to the point that you can be lucky enough to have the right things at the right time with the right stuff. But it requires that level of dedication just to be that lucky, if that makes sense.
How about this? I believe that, using the Red Violin movie as the example, when the violin maker first started in their career, they couldn't create any masterpieces, not even a tiny little masterpiece within the overall piece of the violin. It took years of dedication to finally create the right bridge for the violin. It required years of dedication to require the right finish on the violin. And so that is life. That's what we're talking about right now, is choosing something, dedicating yourself to an outcome with that something, and along the way learning how to do it well enough that now you can easily, I say easily, loosely, you can easily transfer that same process that works specifically for you into the next piece of the violin. Now, interesting. You chose the red violin as sort of the representation of what dedication can create. However, there is an important missing ingredient there in this discussion. We're using that as the example. If we're just purely talking about dedication, a really good violin would have been built. But we're not really talking about just dedication. We're talking about dedication, which can then lead to a vision of the world's best violin, a vision of the most aesthetically pleasing violin, a vision of a violin that actually has secret emotion embedded into it. And so that's for us to decide. Our sense of what our vision should look like is often best built through a focus on dedication of the first part of the violin. Piece by piece, we learn how to make the best violin we can. But somewhere along the way, we also have to keep in the back of our mind that in this journey, eventually, a vision may appear. And that vision is really what the outcome is that we should all seek.
I have a thought on this. I love the concept of embedded emotion because you're absolutely right. And I'm remembering scenes from the movie as we're talking about it. The original idea of the master was that violin was being made for his wife and his new child that was supposed to come along, right? So there was an embedded emotion, but it was never for him, right? It was always for someone external. And I think that is...
Stop cheating. You're giving away information from chapter 1 of the book.
Sorry, dude. But I'm just coming up with this stuff on my own right now.
Yeah, I know.
But the key there was that it was about somebody else. If, like you just said, if someone is dedicated to the art and they want to make the best mastercraft violin that I'm ever going to make, that's about me.
Yes.
But to truly make masterworks, to truly make something that is an embodiment of the dedication, it's for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of clicked in my head, and I love the fact that you are embedding that emotion. That's why people say, mom's food tastes better because it's made with love.
Yeah, for sure.
You're embedding the emotion of doing something for somebody else for the sole reason because it's going to make them happy.
If I can play with the word sole reason, I'm going to flip the soul into soulful. The
Exactly.
Soulful reason. Now, of course, I'm out here at Seb's place. I've been taking some photos and I've been getting a fair bit of feedback in my DMs about, wow, those photos are amazing. Oh my goodness, that's so beautiful. And my jaw is dropping and various terms like this. And it's not hard to do, I suppose. I've been shooting photos for a lot of my life. And it's easy when you've got landscape like this. Yeah. When you have beauty in front of you, readily available, how do you capture that? How do you capture beauty? Which is what I'm trying to do. In fact, I would go so far as to say that I'm not just trying to capture beauty. I'm trying to capture the soul of the moment, the essence of the moment. If I've got a variety of photos up just recently. One is a photo of the chief in the background, a mountain called the Chief, and then a horse, Seb's horse, and kind of a view of the back of Seb, and he's reaching out to touch the horse. And all three of those things are in alignment. And at first glance, that photo is about a dude, a horse, and some landscape. But if someone has a critical eye or a keen eye, or perhaps more importantly, if someone has an eye for soulfulness or is looking for the essence of the image that they're looking at, I hope what they will see is some soulfulness. I hope what they will see is the interconnectedness of a human to a horse, to the land, and all of those things, what they entail in that moment. My job is not just to observe life. My job is to engage in life with enough passion that I can understand what passion is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes total sense. And it brings me back to something you said earlier was you're dedicating your life to something. And I really just want to play with that a little bit, because to dedicate your life, you're not dedicating your time, although you are. You're not dedicating your energy, although you are. But you are dedicating all of you in that one moment, whatever it is you're doing in that thing. And I think looking back on life and in general, those moments that really stick with you for a long period of time, where you can look back and be like, I was dedicated to this. You know, I gave my life to this moment. They are life-changing, critical moments, right? They are the things that that stick with you 70, 80 years down the road. I know when I was talking to my granddad before he passed away, the things that really stuck with him were the points in time where he not only sometimes he had to dedicate his life to those moments, like being in combat or something like that, but also actively dedicating your life to a moment consistently over time. And it's I just really love the concept of dedicating all of you, not just your time, not just your work, all of you.
Since you brought up your granddad, and I can say this openly because you've said it openly on the podcast, like probably a dozen times, on how you and your granddad were kind of out looking at the mountains and he was just like staring off into the abyss and wasn't really seeing what you were seeing. And so you were seeing the world through a set of lenses that were different than his. And what you were saying perhaps was beautiful. Like, look at this. But he wasn't seeing it because beauty perhaps had been diluted through the constantness, the always visible mountain ranges that he would constantly be surrounded by. But if he'd been brought up in a desert and then transported to the mountains, his jaw would have been hanging and he wouldn't have been able to get over the magnificence of the landscape in front of him. But that is what we do as humans. The magnificence of life starts to lose its sparkle, its shine through the consistent grind of life. That mountain range that used to exist now doesn't exist because we don't look at it. We know it's there, or we think it's there, but we can't prove it's there because we don't pause to appreciate the moment, try to capture the soulfulness of where we're existing in that moment, and then recognize upon reflection, as I do after I've taken a photo, of, was I in that moment? What was I experiencing in that moment? Did I really capture it? Or how can I do it better in the future? I believe that dedicating yourself to something with blinders, without reflection or introspection, is simply a journey forward on a one-way highway that you never get to experience anything other than the target lock of the unknown in front of you, missing all of the journey. In other words, you're just in the game for the game rather than in the game for the beautiful game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think interestingly enough, the thing with the mountains was actually my uncle.
Oh,
not
sorry,
my granddad. But no,
okay.
I get your point there. And one of the things that I want to do actually while we're down there, I'd love to take you and Seb and Ash, that's going to be down there with me, out to where Seb and I went hunting, because I think you'd really dig that spot. It's got some great views. But also, I just wanted to add in the fact that that's part of the game, though. That's part of the dedication to life, part of the beautiful tapestry that it is finding a way to share those moments with other people when you find them, right? Because had I not spoken to my uncle in that moment and been like, or had he not spoken to me and said, "Hey man, what are you looking at?" I would not have been able to kind of hit him in the ribs with the things in front of you. And from that point on, now that's a reminder of him to go, "Oh, you know what? I do need to take the time." I would not have been able to do that had I not separated from the mountains for a while and come back and separate and come back. And then also realize to take it in when you're there so that you can actually enjoy it rather than just showing up for the work and then disappearing again. So there's so many pieces that go into the development of a moment there just to share with somebody else and maybe either bring them into that moment or have them bring you into a moment, whatever it is. But it's yeah, it's really interesting. I'm loving the conversation. Now we're at like 55 minutes.
Right.
Time just disappears. Any thoughts? Any final thoughts on dedication, on anything that we've touched on? Anything at all?
Well, I've got lots of final thoughts, but I'm not actually going to do a final thought. I'm just going to like tie up, not loose ends, but just tie up a little something.
Put a little bow on it.
It's probably not a bow. It's probably just like a half hitch. I'd say that first of all, what I've just experienced over the last kind of almost 3 days is a good reminder for everyone that like you can go away from something and then come back to it and realize things that you hadn't seen when you were there last, or you will see how you've changed since last time. And what I mean by that is, and some people know this, but not many people know this. I grew up in Alberta to some degree. I spent nearly a decade as a kid here in the mountains of Alberta, up in Grand Cache, growing up as a kid when I moved from England. And so I was an Alberta boy. And I know a lot of people don't think I'm an Alberta boy, but I'm a freaking Alberta boy, man. And so that was my childhood. That's how I was raised. That was my youth. But when I left Alberta, you kind of forget how big the skies are. You kind of forget that this 180 degrees above your head is so open and so magnificent, and what the mountains look like in the right light versus the mountains in BC where I live. Anywhere in the world that I've been has a different vibe. And all of those vibes are part of my rich tapestry, I suppose. I'm making my point to say that you can go away from something for a long time. And when you come back to it, it's kind of different, but it's kind of the same. And it's for you to understand the delta or the difference between those two things to understand who you are right now. And secondly, talking about dedication as a whole, I'd like to really bring it back to the podcast as the illustrative example of just a couple of dudes who were asked to help and have poured themselves into trying to be of help. And we're at the spot that we're at right now, and we'll be at a different spot a year or two from now. And it's all part of the journey. The frustrations, the wins, we went the wrong direction, now we're going the right direction. All of that stuff happens in life. But don't sweat the details of, oh man, this sucks so bad right now. I mean, we all do. I have. We all focus on how sucky the podcast was for the first year. But it is part of the game. It is a thing that is kind of mandatory. These difficulties in the journey have to happen for you to, at some point in the journey, appreciate the journey for what it was.
Yeah, it made me think of 2020 hindsight.
Yes, of course.
And just the fact that concept is that hindsight is perfectly clear. The only way you'd be able to understand what perfectly clear hindsight is to not have any hindsight. Really great conversation. I'm actually going to be pondering dedication for the next little while, and I'm excited. I think this is going to be a gooder. I don't really have anything to add. I think that was a great way to finish it. But
I
what do you
do.
got?
Oh,
What do you got?
sorry. You'd actually raised another point. It just flashed into my brain. You were saying that you were looking forward to taking myself and Seb out to, that hunting area and etc. And I thought, I bet he is, but maybe for even reasons that he doesn't understand. Because it's easy to say that, you want to show us it but why? And not just the first why, and not just the second why, the third or fourth why. And that's what I would ask everyone to do, is not simply look at things at face value of why you think things. Take a moment to look at that tertiary reason, that fourth, fifth, sixth level of why you're excited. It's easy to see why you're excited, but is it easy to know why you're excited?
That's a very good point. And it's funny because the why really has nothing to do with me.
I know.
And that's what I love about it, is that the dedication to the moment is what I'm seeking out of it. And I'm excited to see what's going to happen once we actually all get there, because it's going to be
beautiful,
pretty cool. Other than that, I got nothing. We got a great show on Friday coming up, and I'm excited for that one. So as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see y'all next week.
Chimo.
Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time.